Check. How you doing out there? Welcome to the Percussion Summit. Weedy. Nate. Peter. Marcelo. JT. Jameson. Come on out. I guess that was sound check?
That was sound check, yeah.
That was sound check? Oh. You guys got your mics beside you? Wanna check it out?
Yeah. Mic check. I guess it works. Yeah. So we have here a multitude of rhythmic perspectives. This is the Drum Summit. This is our 4th year doing it. And it's really been a great journey, just exploring the minds of the drummers. I'm sure we see the festival, everybody has drums going on, and this specific group, we all have, rhythmic identities. And so, we're gonna talk questions, play examples, and really have what I call percussion drum conversation about what happens, back on the back line, of the bandstand. So I think this would be really cool to just jump right in, and we'll give examples based on our answers and try to give you a variety of different perspectives. How's that sound?
Yeah.
Let it rip. Who got first? Ooh, no questions? Crickets? Oh, there we go. What's your name?
Oh, George.
There you go, George.
Yeah, so, okay, I got a question. So, let's say, like, Mike League or somebody like that, wants like, to give you a certain beat. Like, what do you usually, I'm trying to see how to, like, refine this, but, like, what's your take in the studio when you guys are writing songs? What do you, like, do you guys, like, do you search for influences, or, like...
Pretty much ignore him.
Next question. No.
So like you guys like search for influences, or you do like rhythmic patterns, or like so where do you like start off?
So just so I can clarify the question, in a studio setting, when one of the composers introduces a drum pattern for the song, you're wondering what the conversation is like.
Exactly.
To get that pattern together, and how does it become concrete?
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Anybody want to jump on that?
I think it starts with the drummers most of the time, 90% of the time, 99% of the time.
Quit 9999.
Yeah, especially for this last record. Culture Vulture, we started with the whole 2 drummers on every song, but it's always been the three guys on percussion on every song, and they do overdubs on top of that.
Okay.
So it ends up being like 6 or 7 percussion player parts. The drummers this year have decided we're going to put 3 of them on every song, along with 3 percussionists and overdubs. So the drum patterns, it actually ended up being kind of fun between us, because we basically took the approach, okay, all 3 of us are not going to play the same pattern at the same time, so who's going to do what? So we literally was like,
I'll tune my drum kit one way, he'll tune his drum kit one way, he'll tune his kit drum way, and you take the intro, you take the middle, I'll take the outro, and we just flip that on every song. Every song, everybody's playing a different section, and we kind of picked who was going to play what section according to the tone of their kit. And then we kept switching that up on every song too. So the drum patterns, normally they would give us kind of an idea. I mean, we come up with songs. It'll be in GarageBand, it'll be on somebody's phone memos. Just, it kind of comes to you any kind of way. They always present it to us as, this was my idea, but take it and, go where it needs to go. Sometimes we'll switch it. Sometimes their idea is great and they don't realize it until it ends up getting split between 6 people. So a lot of times, it just depends on who the composer is. A lot of them has very specific what they want, and then some are just very open. And at that point, all 3 of us kind of huddle and go, what you want to do?
That's great. Yo, the other thing that I think that happens too, though, is, Mike is, cats are specific. It's a high-level group of musicians. So, if you play something that's not quite the vibe, they're going to let you know. You see what I'm saying? So, for me, what I feel like happens in that moment where, we have a specific groove, someone wants something, I think you got to find, it's like we all played a groove on the same song, but what would happen is, depending on the moment, like you have to find your own kind of personal touch inside what that person wants. So really it just becomes about you understanding like how you approach the instrument, because like Mike will definitely say sometimes like, go to the ride cymbal. And I may just not go to the ride cymbal. You know what I'm saying? And I don't mean I don't mean this in a negative way, but it's like maybe I'll go to the ride cymbal about 8 bars later. You feel me? Right. And then when I do that, he'll say, you know what I mean? So it's not like you just gotta say, oh, I'm gonna do what you do. Oh, okay, you tell me to do this. No, sometimes you break the rules to find the right answer. You know what I'm saying? So it's not exactly right down the middle. You know what I mean? But it's a beautiful exchange that happens between the entire band.
Yes.
Yeah, guys. Yeah.
So once we get the drums grooving with the band, right? Because the drums, in relation to frequency, it's full spectrum. So you have the kick drum hitting at 40 hertz, and then you have the cymbals hitting all the way up in the thousands. So because of that, and that relationship with like the bass and the keys and the guitar and the rest of the rhythm section, that needs to sound complete and melodic in its own right. And then we get to do a lot of things. We basically do everything then. We sort of make something that locks in with that groove and it sounds like it's a part of it. Like it's a part of that family of rhythm. And then we do the fun stuff, which is like adding a vibe or like a landscape, or it's almost like in a painting, you have background and foreground and all these different dimensions, right? So musically, as percussionists, we're trying to give it depth in that way with respect to the music. And like JT said earlier, there's 6 of us. So if you play, if everyone plays 1 extra 1/8 note per bar, that's 3 or a third of the bar, right? So it's like you have to really choose the rhythms and the sounds that you're playing and choose them wisely so that it doesn't get muddy or cluttered. So we'll come up with stuff, and then a lot of times Mike is like, now do less. And so we'll take like little things out, and just naturally I think all of us sort of find something that fits, and then we start breaking it down. And you try to find like the lowest denominator so that everything is speaking to each other and nothing is stepping on each other's toes, right?
And that one thing is also that it could be either stressing, like emphasizing something like that they are already doing, or a counterpoint. Like we could come up with something that goes around the rhythm. So it's usually those 2 things. And frequency-wise, it has to be, obviously, if they're playing all cymbals, maybe we're not gonna play something, cowbells or cymbals.
Before you jump in, I would definitely want to hear what you're about to say, but I would also love to hear an example of that as well.
Yeah.
What's like something that we did like that has like make something?
I mean, whatever. This is the point. But please say it.
Yeah, well, I was going to say too, and then you got to think of timbre and sustain. So, like, if the drummer's going to the ride cymbal and there's a lot of sustain there, then to keep the song driving, I'm going to choose something that's like short and like staccato, and that gives it like sort of that underlying momentum. Yeah. So with respect to all that, I mean, we could keep on going and going and going and talking about their approach, but I think that's a good idea, Lionel. Let's just play something.
Woo!
So see if we do it right.
And I mean, again, do what you want, but I really like that idea of you created something and then you started taking things away to find that like locked vibe, you know? So, thank you. There's definitely a lot going on, but I hope you guys were able to see how we were thinking and shifting and moving and allowing and agreeing and omitting and, you know, a lot of that, and just a lot of self-editing in terms of the overall sound that we had. That was a great question, thank you. I'd like to jump to maybe somebody in the back, anybody in the back? Right? Okay, I'll take you standing up here. So the question is approach to swing, and I guess you're talking about the feel and if it's straighter versus more swung, and how do we apply that? When do we apply that? Okay. Anybody want to jump in on that?
I think a great example is chunks. So the eighth note can be used. Sorry, somebody go after me. But the eighth note is what I call like a very beautiful thing, because eighth notes can be like literally. It's like what's something everybody cooks? Like, you know how guacamole, like everybody makes guacamole? And some people like their guacamole with tomatoes, some people like a little extra lime, you know, some want some spice in there, some tahini or something like that, maybe get a little, you know. So the eighth note has that, it's like a personality, you know what I mean? It's a characteristic of every song. So in chunks, the eighth note, I remember when we started playing this, well no, Larnell and Bobby came up with this tune in soundcheck. And his eighth note, can you show that groove? Check out his eighth note. So that's how the groove starts, right? That's the original groove. And then as the song goes, the eighth note changes. So when I come in with the chorus, it sounds like this. 2, 3. Out a little bit, you know. That's a vibe.
I want to do those same 3 grooves again, and watch when the percussion comes in, what happens to those grooves and why they work so well, specifically talking about the swing. Because when they swing stuff too, it really changes everything. So we'll do that. So do the intro, same thing, intro, middle, third part.
Don't act like you know you don't know it. again, another example of self-editing and awareness and being conscious of what others are doing and push-pull and in that kind of concept with the swing, we're talking about tension and release, right? We're talking about pushing it and making it very elastic. I don't know if you guys want to talk about what it's like to have to work around that swing a little bit.
I think percussion. Sorry. I think for percussionists, we have a little bit more. We get to push the swing or the straight vibe sort of against the band more than anyone else. It's weird how that is. It's just for certain styles, if the drummer's playing straight, it just sounds good if the percussion has a little bit of swing. It just gives it that vibe. So how do we decide that? I don't know. It's like, I think it's just, that's a personal preference, and it just comes from listening to music and who the drummers and the musicians that you've grown up listening to and the styles or folkloric music that that's part of your DNA. And so with that regard, sometimes it sounds terrible too. And so for a percussionist, you really want to be able to lock in with the grid of anyone. So the first thing you should do if you're practicing this thing is to really lock in to that grid, swung or straight, that the drummer's playing and the bass player together. And then maybe start to play against it. And sometimes it's like some happy magic that just happens. But yeah, good question. All right, next question.
So when you start in the studio, when you start in the studio, obviously your parts are like, you're just kind of trying to figure stuff out. But by the end of the studio process, how uniform do your actual parts collectively become? Like, do you know exactly what you're playing throughout an entire piece in the studio setting versus live? Like.
Okay, so the question is do we know exactly what we're playing in the studio setting?
Like a uniform composition throughout the entire piece.
Right. So that's something that we find and sort of do trial and error in the studio, and then in the studio we're able to do multiple takes and stack ourselves and overdub, right? So sometimes that is a serious curse for especially percussion, because then it's like, okay, how the hell am I going to play this live, right? So imagine I put down an intricate shaker pattern, and then I put something that's pretty full and on congas, and then there's this cowbell pattern, and then there's these orchestral crash cymbals. So it's like, wait a minute, I only have 2 arms. And so a lot of times what happens there is you omit certain things and maybe add some inner beats or something. So if I'm going to omit the shaker and keep the cowbell pattern, I might put some grace notes on the cowbell or something else that will give that shaker sort of sound. So this thing is cool. I use this for replacing the shaker a lot of times because it's got that metallic sort of that cuts through the band sound. So I can play that with the stick. So now I'm not having to shake. And when you're shaking something and also hitting something, it gets a little weird, right? Because you're manipulating beats. So that could become weird. And so it's almost like I take 20% of this part, 40% of this part, and 15% of this part, and then strap it all together, and then it becomes like a live sort of take. And then all of us have our own takes on that, which is really fun, and then it's fun for the band. And it's the same with the drummers too, everyone kind of has their own take, like Jameson was saying earlier. But yeah, that's part of the fun part of seeing a band live, right? Because they're gonna play the song different than the album. I mean, that's what I would prefer, instead of going to see a band and it's just sounds exactly like the record, right? Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
You guys talked a lot about things that you can do to complement the rest of the band and soloists. But what are things you guys look for in a soloist that leave you space? Or what are ways you guys can communicate? What are you looking for from the soloist, I guess?
from accompanying a soloist is what you're saying, or us soloing?
Yeah, and when you guys are accompanying a solo.
Okay.
What do we look for from them?
Yeah.
I know for me, I look for where it's kind of their build, where they're starting from, how they're going to get to the next point, and where do they want to end up. And if you really listen to them, they'll tell you. From the, I know, especially with this band, when we break down solos in certain songs, within the first 2 bars of the guy soloing, you can kind of tell, okay, now you want to do this tonight. Okay. So we'll go there. And it literally varies. Like, all those guys have so many different personalities, especially in the horn section, and the keyboards too. So it's a ton of fun for all of us to just kind of see, like, okay, whatever he ate today, whatever he drank today, he's wanting to just go completely opposite of where we just went. And that's a lot of fun, especially like Nate was saying, for the live aspect. Man, every night, if your ears aren't wide open, there's just no telling where they're going to go when they solo, because they'll just take off in one direction. If you try to figure it out and anticipate them, you're going to miss it. Because they never play what you kind of expect what they're going to do. They got their effects pedals, and it's kind of a lot of fun with that band. I know from the traditional standpoint, soloists, you just kind of go back and forth. It's always kind of the same thing in the box, but with this band, it's just wide open. And sometimes they'll wait like 2 bars before they even say anything, and you just kind of sit there like, and then they'll play a couple of notes, and you just go from there. I know you guys probably the same experience.
Yeah.
Yes, Keita.
So as a percussionist, I think it's a different perspective, like drummers accompanying, and for me especially, I'm kind of enjoying accompanying soloists, because the percussionist actually can go to more like create a groove with the drummer, or you can even go to kind of like start conversation with whoever's taking the solo. So I can kind of go free, like building the groove with drummer, or I can just go in kind of more into, just go with kind of close to more solos, people. So it's kind of different, but and also as JT says, we never know what's gonna happen, and we just go with it. So, yeah.
And then also, I think everyone, especially on the stage, does is they listen to the soloist, and they listen for the space that the soloist creates as well. Because when you pay attention to that, and you pay attention to where, like, if it's a horn player, where they're breathing, and you sort of breathe within your groove too, if that makes sense, that then you're able to you're dancing with them a little bit more, is how I like to look at it. Or even sometimes, like if someone's playing a lot of notes, as a percussionist, I'll either go to something that's very consistent, because if they're just lighting it up with 16 notes and other things, I'll go somewhere where it's just like 8 notes on a tambourine or a cowbell or something, just to give the listener something to grasp onto, like more of a foundation. And it's the same with the drummer. Like when the drummer starts really interacting with the soloist, as a percussionist, I then go to like background, like I was talking earlier. So they're in the foreground, right, with the soloist, and then I just try to be like that landscape in the back and just keep something very consistent. Yeah.
Weedy, do you have any thoughts on that at all? In terms of, because I know, like, I was watching you with Christian Scott last night, which was unbelievable. So,
it's funny you said that. Thank you. It's funny you said that, because what this instrument is doing now is that our main goal now is to create a voice between me or any melodic instrument, because this is also a melodic instrument. Let me tell you all right now, this is a melodic instrument. And so for me, as a djembe player, I try to find a way to interact with the soloist at the same time, because they're playing some crazy shit up. But I try at the minute when I know that person is playing something to talk to that person immediately. They go, it's the moment That person, he'll smile and turn around and say, okay, now the next level of it is to go to another plane. So for me, I think conversation amongst percussionist, djembe full drummer, and the soloist at that moment is very important. You know, space is important, but conversation is important because that's how music. From my culture, from being from Ghana, being born in Ghana, we try to find a way to talk to the lead singer or the lead player at that moment. That's how conversation is with us. We have our parts, but the conversation comes from the lead player, whether it's chimefu, djembe, tabla, sabar, whatever. We try to find a way to advocate that kind of conversation with those drums. That's what me and Christian has done with this new sound.
One more thing. It's also important to know when not to play, and sometimes, in my case, I would leave drum set along with the soloist and come in later on, so it builds up. You know, sometimes it's also good to give that space.
How many percussion players do we have in the audience? Percussion players. Like, just to kind of single them out for a second. You see a band, especially like Snarky Puppy, you see the drummers, and you just in any band particularly, but in a band like this with the drummers, we have our thing, but you really gotta check out what they're doing. The space that they have to operate in and put this one little note on that one little beat, and they have to wait for it. That's a crazy mindset to sit there and you got to deal with the drums, all the other instruments, and then they got to fit in at these little cracks in time. That's a serious mindset to get into that. So just kudos to these guys to kind of fit in and all the other percussion players. It's a serious thing.
Yeah. I have to say one thing too, that I've done this in a lot of lectures and workshops, so I want to say one thing that's very important, that from now on, from this day forth, I need everybody here to do. We cannot separate what you see. There's a lot of separation, but in the East, there's no separation. In the West, there's a separation. It's important to know that, okay, well, in the vernacular of how we speak, I'm the drummer, you're the percussionist. You see that again? But the thing is, we have to find a way, and this band has done it, is to find a way to make both entities one. You see, a lot of times we think that, yes, it's important because whether you're playing music of the diaspora, music from India, or from China, we always see these folkloric instruments, the front of the music. Because the folkloric instrument is what? The melody of the music. But we have found a way to make the folkloric drums and the Western drums, as well as the classical drums, as they say, one. Because historically speaking, a good funny thing, I made a joke the other day. They said, well, I'm the drummer, you're the percussionist. I said, well, we're all percussionists if we really want to break it down. A piano player is a percussionist. On percussion, Sean Martin. You see, we can say that. Am I well? You know? But I'm saying that to say that we all have to realize that what you're seeing here is one. If you look at music from the Cuban world, they never say, okay, the percussionist is the conguero, timbalero, bateria. And they all know that melody they're playing is what? One. So from now on, we cannot think as, well, these guys are this and these guys are that. Let's consider them drummers all playing for one more important function. That's the music. Yeah.
That's beautiful. We're out of time, but do we have a moment just to kind of give a quick benediction on the drums? Yeah, can we do it? And then right to the ball, kind of like?
Yeah.
One minute after the ball. Yeah.
We did.